Imagine living your entire life without taking a single proper bath. Sounds impossible, right? But for medieval Europeans, this was reality. Step into medieval Europe, a world of castles, knights, and peasants. A world that smelled, frankly, terrible. But why? The answer is far more bizarre than you think. One word defines medieval hygiene more than any other. Fear. Pure, irrational, deadly fear of water itself. In ancient Rome, public baths were everywhere. Citizens bathed daily in grand marble pools. But after Rome fell, Europe forgot this beautiful tradition completely. Our first chapter explores the most terrifying reason medieval people avoided water. It involves a disease that wiped out half of Europe. In 1347, the Black Death arrived in Europe. Within 4 years, this horrific plague killed between 75 and 200 million people across the continent. Entire villages vanished overnight. Half of Europe's entire population died. Imagine that scale of loss happening to your country today. It was unimaginable horror. Doctors of the era reached a horrifying conclusion. They believed that water itself was spreading the plague through open skin pores. Medieval physicians studied the disease and made a terrible mistake. They thought hot water opened skin pores, letting deadly miasma vapors enter the body. So they declared bathing extremely dangerous to public health. On one side, ancient Roman doctors prescribed daily baths for health. On the other, medieval doctors prescribed avoiding water for survival. Same continent, completely opposite advice. This belief spread across Europe like wildfire. Royal physicians warned kings and queens. Bathing became associated with death itself in the medieval mind. King Louis XIV of France took only 3 baths in his entire 77-year life. 3 baths. In a lifetime. Royalty led this strange movement. Queen Isabella of Castile reportedly took only 2 baths her entire life. One at birth and one before her wedding. She publicly bragged about her cleanliness avoidance. Now we move to chapter 2. If bathing was forbidden, how did anyone manage to live without smelling absolutely horrible? The answer involves some creative solutions. Medieval Europeans developed elaborate alternatives to actual washing. They changed linen undergarments frequently, believing fabric absorbed dirt and oils. White linen became the ultimate hygiene status symbol of the era. Medieval people had 4 main strategies for staying acceptably presentable. First, frequent linen changes daily. Second, wiping skin with dry cloths. Third, brushing hair vigorously to remove oils. Fourth, masking smells with perfumes and herbal pouches everywhere. Perfume became absolutely essential to medieval European society. Without daily bathing, strong scents masked the constant body odor of every single person around you. Pomanders were popular accessories. These tiny scented balls hung from belts and necks to fight terrible smells everywhere. Wealthy nobles carried small herb-filled pomanders made of gold or silver. These contained ambergris, musk, and crushed flowers to create a fragrant bubble around their unwashed bodies. In medieval Paris, gentlemen reportedly carried tiny dogs in their arms. Why? The animal's strong natural smell helped mask their owner's body odor in public. Chapter 3 brings us to perhaps the strangest reason of all. Medieval religion played a massive role in keeping people permanently dirty. The medieval Christian church developed a complex theological relationship with bodily cleanliness. Many priests preached that physical dirt was actually a sign of spiritual purity and humble devotion to God. Saint Jerome himself declared that a clean body and clean clothes meant an unclean soul. This wasn't a joke or exaggeration. It was serious religious doctrine. Many famous medieval saints actively avoided bathing as proof of religious devotion. They wore the same clothes for years and never washed, believing dirt brought them closer to heaven. Saint Agnes was famously celebrated for refusing to ever wash her body. The church praised this as ultimate spiritual achievement, inspiring countless devoted followers across Europe for centuries. Public bathhouses had once flourished across medieval cities. But the church increasingly viewed these warm, steamy spaces as dangerous dens of sin and immoral behavior. By 1500, Paris had reduced its public bathhouses from over 30 active ones down to just 2. The church and the plague together had destroyed an entire industry of cleanliness in only a few generations. Chapter 4 reveals the disgusting daily reality. What did medieval streets and homes actually look, smell, and feel like? Prepare yourself for shocking details. Medieval streets were rivers of human waste. Chamber pots were emptied directly out of windows onto crowded streets below. Pedestrians dodged falling sewage daily as a normal part of urban life. Cities developed a charming custom. People shouted Gare de Leu before throwing waste from windows. Pedestrians below had only seconds to dodge. London's River Thames became so polluted with human waste, animal carcasses, and city sewage that the smell could reportedly be detected from miles away on a warm summer day. The numbers paint a horrifying picture. Average bathing happened once per year. Streets contained 8 kilograms of waste per square meter. And 1 million rats infested medieval London alone. Lice and fleas infested everyone equally. Kings, queens, peasants, and priests all carried these tiny tormentors in their hair, clothes, and beds every single night. Medieval beds were absolute nightmares. Straw mattresses crawled with bedbugs, lice, and fleas. People shared these beds with multiple family members and farm animals nightly. Teeth rotted at alarming rates. Most adults lost most of their teeth by age 30. Without dental care, mouths were sources of constant pain and unbearable bad breath. Chapter 5 examines who actually did try to stay clean. Not everyone embraced filth. Some surprising groups maintained excellent hygiene throughout this era. The Vikings, surprisingly, were famously clean compared to other Europeans. They bathed weekly in hot springs, washed their hair, and used elaborate wooden combs daily to maintain their famously well-groomed appearance. English chroniclers actually complained that Vikings stole their women. Why? Because Viking men bathed weekly and groomed their hair daily, while English men rarely did either. Women found Vikings irresistibly attractive. Islamic societies maintained exceptional hygiene throughout this entire period. Daily ritual washing was required by Islamic religious law. Public bathhouses called hammams flourished across the Muslim world. In Cordoba, Spain under Muslim rule, there were over 600 active public bathhouses serving citizens daily. Meanwhile, just across the border in Christian Europe, almost none existed. Japan during this same medieval period developed extensive public bathing culture. Onsen hot springs became central social spaces where people of all classes washed together regularly throughout life. Jewish communities also maintained strict hygiene through ritual baths called mikvahs. These were religious requirements throughout the entire medieval period across Europe. Medieval Europe was actually the only major civilization on Earth that abandoned bathing during this era. Every other culture maintained their hygiene traditions throughout the era. Chapter 6 examines the disastrous health consequences. What happens when an entire civilization stops washing for several hundred years straight? The results were predictably catastrophic. Skin diseases ran absolutely rampant. Eczema, fungal infections, leprosy, and bacterial sores became part of everyday medieval life. Many disorders we consider rare today were widespread back then. Medieval life expectancy averaged just 30 years. Poor hygiene contributed significantly to this short life. Most diseases that killed people were entirely preventable. Major plagues struck Europe repeatedly throughout this filthy period. The Black Death began in 1347, killing 50%. Plague returned in 1665, destroying London. Cholera arrived in 1832. Each outbreak traced directly to terrible hygiene and unclean water supplies. Mothers and infants died at staggering rates. Childbirth was a death sentence when doctors went directly from corpses to delivering babies without ever washing their bloody hands between patients. The infant mortality numbers shock modern minds. 40% of all newborns died. 1 in 3 women died during childbirth itself. And surviving children faced 50% odds of reaching age 5. Doctors, paradoxically, were among the worst spreaders of disease. They moved between sick patients without washing, carrying invisible killers on their hands and dirty surgical instruments. Our final chapter brings the story to its happy ending. When and how did Europe finally rediscover the simple miracle of soap and clean water? Change came slowly. In 1846, Hungarian Dr. Ignaz Semmelweis made a revolutionary discovery. He noticed mothers died less often when doctors simply washed their hands between patients first. Ignaz Semmelweis was tragically ignored and mocked by fellow doctors. They refused to accept that their own dirty hands killed patients. He died in an asylum, hated by his colleagues for telling them to wash. His Vienna hospital ward showed shocking results immediately. Before doctors started hand-washing, 18% of mothers died horribly. After implementing simple hand-washing protocols, only 2% died. By the late 1800s, soap became affordable for ordinary working people. Mass production made cleanliness possible for everyone, not just the wealthy elite, for the very first time in history. 4 key innovations brought Europe back to cleanliness. First, germ theory finally explained disease properly. Second, mass-produced soap became affordable. Third, indoor plumbing reached ordinary homes. Fourth, public health education taught proper hygiene to all citizens. By 1900, most European homes had indoor plumbing and weekly bathing became normal again. The dark age of filth finally ended after roughly 1200 years of unwashed European misery. Modern Europeans now bathe approximately 300 times yearly. Compare this to medieval Europeans who bathed just once annually on average. We bathe roughly 300 times more often than our medieval ancestors did. The lesson from medieval hygiene history remains relevant today. Science can save lives when properly applied. But superstition and fear can also kill millions over many generations of cultural mistakes. As we end this story, remember this truth. Cleanliness is more than comfort. It is survival itself. Medieval Europe taught us this in the harshest possible way. So the next time you step into a warm shower, take a moment to appreciate it. You're enjoying a privilege that medieval Europeans feared, condemned, and avoided for over 1,000 years of their lives. Now you know the shocking truth. Medieval Europe stank. And science finally saved us all from this terrible fate. What other historical beliefs do we accept today that future generations will find absolutely insane? Drop your thoughts below and subscribe for more.